Welcome to the Raider Critique. This is your post-game review, Week 12. The Oakland Raiders versus the Baltimore Ravens. And, well, I'm not going to get mad. I feel like getting mad is it's pointless now. Especially since we knew exactly what was going to happen. Maybe not exactly what was going to happen, because I figured we were going to get Tim Tebowed by this football team and Homeboy was just going to run all over us. Well, they decided to wait until the second half before they started doing that type of thing to us. And the defense played their heart out. They did everything they could to try to keep this ball game close, even though in the score it doesn't seem that way. Now, I want to thank all of the subscribers who have subscribed to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and all of that good stuff, and all the new subscribers who have come to check out the channel to see what this channel is all about. Well, what we're going to go over today is basically like every post-game review. We're going to go in here, we're going to take a look at the stats, and then we're going to point out some things on this football team that desperately need to be changed. Because obviously, with a 2-9 record, there's a lot of things that need to be changed. I figured that we were going to run defense the way that we were going to run defense this game. And we did the best that we could to isolate Lamar Jackson and keep him into the pocket, force him to throw the football, and it did pay off on 2 interceptions. Penalties killed us. The referees killed us by not calling a lot of calls against the Ravens that were blatant holds, like during the punt return. And I still don't understand some of these damn new rules, especially when it comes to like how there's no tuck rule anymore. I understand there's no tuck rule, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If the ball is going forward after you're throwing the ball, it's an incomplete pass, correct? It's not a fumble. Or does the arm actually have to be moving forward? Because that pass that Derek Carr threw was a forward pass in a spiral that could have been actually caught. It looked like an incomplete pass to me. But hey, hit me up in the comments and tell me if I'm wrong. But I mean, honestly, there was a lot of bad calls today from the referees. Not going to say that's the reason why we lost the game, but it definitely didn't help. Now, I did happen to call our score, but I was quite off on the Ravens score. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the intro, and then we're going to go ahead and go over the stats like we always do. And then let's go ahead and rag a little bit on this football team if you guys don't mind. So here we are at the stats portion. I'm actually setting up the camera here a little bit differently this time to where I cover up all the drive stuff and on the side. Let's go over here and take a look at our offense. Derek Carr went 16 of 34 for 194 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. But that fumble was crucial. The fumble that I believe wasn't a fumble. Doug Martin, man, I want to say, honestly, I think I was wrong about Doug Martin. And I was very critical of Doug Martin in the past, and he's actually becoming a pretty nice acquisition for this football team, especially with Marshawn out. And he had 11 carries for 51 yards with 1 touchdown, which was actually a controversial touchdown because there was some type of mingling going on for the football because he didn't go into the end zone with 2 hands. Seth Roberts had 1 rushing play for 11 yards. DeAndre Washington went 3. He carried it 3 times for 8 yards, 2.7 average. Jalen Richard, one rush for 1 yard to Jalen Richard. Now, how are we going to get anything done if we don't get dudes like Jalen Richard involved in the offense? Jordy Nelson on an end around 1 for -2 yards. I don't understand why we even ran that play. And A.J. McCarron came in after Derek Carr went into the tent. And he had 2 rushing plays for -2 yards. Receiving, Seth Roberts actually showed up. 2 receptions for 54 yards on 3 targets. Lee Smith, 2 receptions for 39 yards. He was targeted twice. Jared Cook was targeted 5 times, only came down with 2 receptions, but one of those happened to be a touchdown. 2 receptions for 32 yards. Doug Martin targeted 4 times. He had 3 receptions for 21 yards. Marcel Aitman, now this is the big one right here. And Mikey said something about this. 10 targets, man. Marcel Aitman was targeted 10 times. He only came down with the ball 3 times. We need more production out of our wide receivers than this. We cannot win football games with production like this. Especially when they are putting up 34 points on us. Jalen Richard had 2 receptions for 15 yards. He was targeted 4 times. DeAndre Washington, 1 reception for 9 yards. He was targeted once. Keon Hatcher brought into the game. He had 1 reception for 8 yards. He only had 2 targets. Jordy Nelson was targeted once all game. And the pass was in between, I believe, double coverage. It was a good pass. In the wide open part of the field, Jordy Nelson just can't get separation. He's not as fast as he used to be, and he's definitely not developing any type of separation in between him and the corners to be able to make these catches that he was doing for Aaron Rodgers back in the past with the Packers. Johnny Holton, he came into the game. He was only targeted once. All right. Derek Carr, that 1 fumble, and it was lost. It was actually quite terrible, especially at the point of the game that it happened in. Reggie Nelson had an interception. Marcus Gilchrist had an interception. Both of those were off-tip passes made by our wonderful corners, Gary and Conley especially being one of those, and one of our linebackers, I believe it was Morrow, hitting the ball up in the air for Reggie Nelson to pick the ball off. I mean, I really don't see us having to go over very much more of our team. We'll go over the defense a little bit. Tahir Whitehead had 8 tackles, 8 solo tackles, 6 assists. Everybody wants to say about how he's balling. Well, yeah, he's balling out. Just like old Carl Joseph here with his 7 tackles and 1 assisted tackle. And Rashawn Melvin, 4 tackles with no assisted tackles. That's because they're getting into our second level. All right, and if they're getting into the second level, that's not good. Because that means they're averaging at least 6 yards. Okay? They're averaging at least 6 yards, and that's why you're seeing dudes like Tahir Whitehead get a lot of tackles and Carl Joseph get a lot of tackles because they're moving into our second level. Arden Key, I mean, we really needed something out of him today. And we got 2 tackles out of him, 1 assisted. Nick Nelson had 3 tackles, 2 assisted. Jason Kabinda, 3 tackles, 1 assisted. Nicholas Morrow, 3 tackles. And he also had a sack. 2 tackles for loss. Nicholas Morrow did very well on our linebacking core today. And Nicholas Morrow needs to pat himself on the back. As a matter of fact, the defense doesn't need to really hold themselves accountable for this when the offense cannot stay on the field long enough to give the defense a break. I mean, I can't harp on that enough. Man, P.J. Hall didn't even show up today. You know, Maurice Hurst didn't even show up today, not like last week. Our good old kicker, Daniel Carlson, 1 of 1 field goal, 42 long, 2 extra points. And then Johnny Towns sent his ass to free agency, had 6 punts, 44.7 yard average. He had a long of a 52-yard punt, but the dude's still garbage, man. He don't need to be here. I miss Marquette King. I really do. I miss Marquette King. Now we're hopping over into the team stats. Now, as you can see, the Oakland Raiders had 249 total yards. Baltimore had 416 total yards. Our passing yards was 182, which was a fraction more than Baltimore's 174. Our rushing yards was 67. Baltimore's rushing yards, 242 yards. We were averaging 4.4 yards per play. They were averaging 6. I mean, when it comes to the turnovers, we won the turnover battle. We allowed 3 sacks, though, and that fumble was crucial. We're only 23% on third down efficiency. They were 61%. And they dominated the time of possession on us, which is probably the first time that I've noticed any team dominate us in the time of possession this season. 34 minutes and 12 seconds to 25 minutes and 48 seconds. Baltimore even had more penalties than us. So when you really look at this, the sacks allowed is a big glaring issue. We allowed 3 total sacks, and that was because of our wonderful tackles. Our average yards per play, 4.4 yards. That shows me that we have no separation when it comes to the passing game, or lackluster offensive play calling, or both. So now we go look at Baltimore. And there's one big glaring fact, and I don't even have to scroll down to find out what it is. Lamar Jackson goes 14 of 25 for 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Definitely not his throwing arm that really killed us, even though he hit us for damn near 200 yards. But you go down here, Gus Edwards, 23 carries for 118 yards, averaging 5.1 yards a carry. Lamar Jackson himself, 11 carries for 71 yards, 1 touchdown, averaging 6.5 yards a carry. Ty Montgomery, 8 carries for 51 yards, averaging 6.4 yards a carry. Let that sink in, Raider Nation. So as I'm jumping all over the screen here, man, this is your final screenshot of the post-game review of the 34-17 victory for the Ravens over the Raiders in Baltimore. Really don't think that there's anything else much to say about this football team and about how this game went. So why don't we hop back over to the Shield and discuss what our problems were for this game. So if it's one thing that I have noticed with this football team, man, especially with this year, okay, if we can point our finger, we're going to point our finger in a lot of different directions on why this football team is doing so bad this year. Now, I promised y'all that I wouldn't get angry and heated, but I just don't know if I can keep that promise right now. Because whether we are losing to get the first round draft, the first overall pick, or not, is irrelevant to me. Okay, because regardless on whether you're picking in between number 1 and number 6, there is no guarantee on these draft picks on how good they're going to be. We have seen people go like Aaron Rodgers way deep into the draft. And look at the stud he became. Tom Brady was a 5th round pick. Okay, so anybody sitting here talking about how we should be tanking for the first overall pick hasn't done their history. Most number 1 overall picks are busts. And if you do your research and you crunch the numbers enough, you figure out it's roughly in between 72 and 75% of first overall picks are busts. That's nothing that I want on John Gruden's shoulders, especially after what we gave him this year with a football team, and look at what he did to them. All right? Our offensive line is the most overpaid. And I don't mean to rag on these players because, they play football better than I do. That's obviously why I didn't make the NFL. But I know that if I made millions of goddamn dollars, I would play better to protect my quarterback, to give my team an opportunity to win. Our offensive line's not doing that. We have 2 tackles that are rookies, and one of them is hurt. He can't back up well, and you all know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Colton Miller. He was getting torched by Suggs all day long. All right, that was a bad matchup for him, especially with him playing with an injury. Now, how severe this injury is, I don't know, but I can tell you what, I see it on the field. He can't backpedal. He doesn't backpedal that well, man. He's getting burned. And just like the dude on the opposite side, old Brandon Parker. Now look, I got a question for you, buddy. You were such an excellent run blocker. As a matter of fact, you knocked Jefferson right out of his shoes and basically knocked him straight out of the game when you were run blocking for Doug Martin. Now, when the day came at practice for you to learn pass blocking, were you sick? Did you call out? Because you can't pass block worth a fuck. You were getting burned left and right. Derek Carr didn't even have a chance to set his feet to throw the ball, let alone find to see if there was any wide receivers open, which of course they weren't because they can't get separation. But you'd think that you could have at least... You play in the NFL. You're designated to play the line. Your main objective is to protect the quarterback and to make holes for the running back. To advance the football up the field, because football is the game of inches. How can you expect your offense or your quarterback to make plays when you can't give him more than a second and a half to throw the football? You were getting twisted around, twirled around. You looked absolutely ridiculous out there when it came to pass blocking. It was cringeworthy. Watching this whole offensive line play this season has been cringeworthy, knowing how much money we spent on this line. Donald Penn is not even anywhere to be around, gone on injured reserve. How much money is gone there? The only bright spot on that line is Rodney Hudson. Other than that, that line is overpaid and old. We need to start there. We need to fix that. Because obviously, when you were getting rid of all these players who were supposed prima donnas and selfish, you forgot to look at the offensive line, who was the ones that got Derek Carr hurt back in 2016 to begin with. So maybe you've been barking up the wrong tree there, Mr. Gruden, on which players you should be getting rid of and which players you should be keeping. Bruce Irvin, I believe, yes, he needed to go. The dude was a cancer. Obviously, he was not happy after Khalil Mack left. But Amari Cooper? You got rid of our wide receiver. You got rid of our young wide receiver, and now we have to rely on Marcel Aitman, Seth Roberts, which Seth Roberts had a great game, but he can't do it all by himself. We don't have Martavis Bryant. Jordy Nelson is a mere image of his former self. All I want to hear you say, Mr. Gruden, is, man, I fucked up when it came to the wide receivers. Because you did. You fucked up when it came to the wide receivers. We used to be a bona fide threat through the air. Now Derek Carr doesn't even know who to throw the ball to. We didn't use Jalen Richard right this game, not at all. Lackluster play calling. Offensive line can't block. You're putting way too much on your defense to keep us in these games. And then you wonder why they give up 34 points. Well, they had them held down until your offense stalled went 3 and out twice, and then Derek Carr had the fumble. It's not your defense's fault. Your offense is not executing. You obviously don't know what the hell you're doing. Or maybe the game really has separated from you so far that maybe it's done passed you by. All I know is that you've taken a football team that should have been contenders, and you ripped us down, and you turned us into this heap of garbage that we see today. This is what happens when you take away all of your key players. All the players that you said, sir, at the beginning of the season that you were here to build around. Well, I want to thank everybody for stopping by this episode of the Raider Critique. This is the end of the episode. I will be coming at you guys with a pre-game review for next week. I mean, it is what it is. This is how this football team works, and basically it's just one big gigantic shit sandwich, and anybody who bears the shield, well, we're all just going to have to take a bite. And I want to thank you guys for all showing up, man. I'm going to go ahead and sign on out of here. More than likely, you guys will see me in the chat rooms on Mondays with Mikey and Murph. So make sure you go ahead and tune into that. And don't forget to tune into Watts Raider and Raider John. Make sure you tune into his review as well. I mean, there's plenty of Raider content out there. Maybe a lot of these other guys have a lot more other positive things to say than I do. Maybe might be able to lift our spirits a little bit. But, you know, hey, we won't know unless we listen. So make sure you guys go ahead and tune in to everybody, and make sure you check out Murph's Fan Cave and Splatterhead and Fitz, and, man, just all the Raider content out there, man. Raiders_1995. Angry Raider. You all know who all y'all are, man. This is the Raider Critique. I'm signing out of here. Peace.
That's what the Raiders are all about. All right? This organization is built on a commitment to what? Excellence. And God dang it, we're going to commit ourselves to excellence right down the stretch. Sir. I'm so proud of all you guys. You learn a lot about going home after that 49er game with your head in your hands. But what you learned is you're the most mentally tough team in football. And that's going to go a long way. It's going to serve us well. Man, enjoy the wins. They're hard to get in this league. Let's come back to work. Let's get ready for Thanksgiving in Baltimore. God bless y'all, man.
Family on 3. 1, 2, 3.